Okay. Mark, do you want to start?
Yes. Um, uh, Let me first introduce myself, and then I'll talk a little bit about ECHO. My name is Mark Getzendanner, and I am a senior resident of Jefferson County and have been involved with ECHO for the last 10 years. It's been my privilege to serve as a volunteer driver, a volunteer office worker, a board member, and chairman of the board for a couple of terms. And so I have gotten to see firsthand just the impact that ECHO has upon our community. Sometimes when I go to pick up a rider and there were tears in their eyes, so thankful that we were able to provide this service. So ECHO this year celebrated its 25th anniversary, and we provide over 1,100 volunteer transportation rides to medical appointments during the course of the year. We do that with only 2 staff people. And so it's a very well efficient run organization. In terms of introduction, that's just about what I have to say, Sarah.
Okay. I'm Nancy Bud Garvin, and I've been privileged to be a driver for ECHO, and then I served as the development person for ECHO for a while, doing the grant writing and stuff. And so now I'm a member of the board and have been for a couple of years now. And uh, we every time we think about what ECHO does for our community, it's just one of those things that everybody feels good about. You know, if I go somewhere to speak to people or talk to people, I'll ask people, how many of you heard of ECHO? And, you know, at least 2/3 of the room usually raises their hand. That's not just because of our transportation program, it's also because of our equipment lending program, which is not a washed-out issue, and we don't spend any of our washed-out funds on equipment. But it's an important program for people to get to know ECHO. As Mark said, for 25 years, we've been providing this service to East Jefferson County. And what's critical about it is that we are a county which is already the oldest in the state, but our senior population is growing every single year because we become a target retirement destination. And so as our population of seniors, who obviously need and use medical services greater than younger populations, the medical services, the doctors, and the other healthcare facilities here are not quite keeping up with the amount of demand that is developing. So as a result, our seniors need to go to appointments and are referred quite regularly to doctors and providers in Clallam County, in Kitsap County, Pierce County, and of course, we also take people into Seattle because Pill Hill, it's where a lot of our residents go. Yeah. Mark?
Picking up on that, ECHO is the only provider in our community that provides door-to-door service. We have met with other providers trying to form strategic alliances, but unfortunately, we're the only ones that do what we can do. That's door-to-door transportation services. Paratransit, for example, is a limited schedule and has regular stops. So oftentimes these seniors or disabled persons can't make it to those stops. And at the same time, they may not be able to wait around after an appointment to schedule. So we're the only one in the community that does that. And it's one reason that we're so revered by the residents of our community. I would just like to add just as a couple of examples. Dialysis has become a major portion of the rides that we provide. And sometimes those are 3-day-a-week or 4-day-a-week trips for the same recipient. And so that challenges us with our volunteer drivers. The other problem that we have is that our volunteer drivers are also senior citizens. And so we continue to have to replace our drivers because they then in turn need the services of ECHO. So it's kind of a circle of life thing here in Jefferson County, and it's one thing that ECHO just is able to fulfill.
Thanks, Mark. The other thing that is becoming a significant part of our demand is people going through chemotherapy. And that very often starts out with an everyday schedule. And for the most part, most of our chemotherapy patients are going either to Port Angeles or to Poulsbo, Silverdale, and some even are going into Seattle. So that's 5 days a week, and it means that we have people who are really dependent upon us for their life, because if they can't get to those appointments, they're not going to be able to get well. Our human transportation plan, the Human Resources Transportation Plan that the Peninsula RTPO puts together, has often mentioned, and in their newest version, they have brought up the fact that there is an ongoing need for people who need individual attention. There are people who simply cannot wait for or handle the paratransit service, which is multiple people in a van, and they have to wait and people run late. And so here's somebody who's been through a procedure or a treatment that leaves them feeling not so nice, and they have to sit there and wait for the bus to come back. The biggest issue, though, is that the paratransit only works a half mile off the fixed route schedule. And so all the people who live up in the hills and all of the wonderful developments that are being developed around Port Townsend, if they're more than a half mile off the fixed bus route, the only transportation that's available to them is from ECHO. And so obviously the demand for our services just keeps growing and growing.
I would like to jump in here and just, if I could share with you some of the emotions that our volunteer drivers and other volunteers experience. We participate in the Roadie Parade each year annually in Port Townsend, and I have to tell you, it's really kind of a hokey deal. I mean, there's lots of wagons that are painted up and everything, but when ECHO goes through, the fans cheer.
Yeah. They yell, "We love you, ECHO." So we get tremendous support from our community. Our individual donations are more than 40% of our total revenue base. But we must depend, in order to keep our service free of charge, we have to depend on grants from WSDOT and from O3A and from other sources as we can find them. So it's a critical factor for our survival to continue to be supported by grants.
Absolutely.
And it's a critical factor for the individuals who live in our county to continue to have the support of ECHO. I think, Mark, when you were talking to the other transportation providers, they basically said, "We can't do what you do."
That's exactly correct. And they were amazed that we were able to do what we do. So, I mean, it was a great meeting. We did learn a lot from each other, but we also learned that there are just some things that those providers can't provide. And in this community, ECHO is the only one that can.
Yeah.
And we're totally dependent upon the contributions of our recipients and individual contributions. And ironically, the population that we serve oftentimes can't afford to donate very much. So we're totally dependent on service clubs and churches and other things for our funding.
Yeah. In the Peninsula Transportation Plan that just came out recently, in Jefferson County, there are only two transportation services listed: Jefferson Transit and ECHO. So it's pretty clear that ECHO has become a very essential and necessary service for East Jefferson County. In the last 25 years, we've served over 9,000 individuals in our county. The way our population is growing, that percentage is getting to be really significant. We support people to stay in their home and be able to age at home rather than having to go into an institution. So in a sense, we provide one of the two services every community needs. They need food, like from Meals on Wheels, and they need transportation, which is what ECHO does. So we thank you for your attention. We thank you for considering us.